Welcome to the Moon Baby Magic podcast, a space to honor women's rites of passage stories. From menarche to menopause, the initiations of womanhood all live within our wombs. Through our first bleed to our last, we come to know ourselves more deeply. This is a platform to reclaim the sacredness of all of it. I'm your host, Natalie Elliott, birth keeper and women's coach, specializing in womb wellness and hormonal healing. Ready for slow and sacred storytelling? Let's dive in. Hello, women. Welcome back. Took a little impromptu break there. And that's kind of what I want to speak to today. So today I am on day 16 of my cycle, and I expect that I will have a temperature spike tomorrow morning. On the day this podcast will be coming out, confirming ovulation, because I've been having all of my egg white fluids and feeling that energy. And this cycle, I've actually been dedicating my ovulatory energy not to a work creation or, something new I'm creating for my audience, which is historically what I've done, but have been dedicating this energy to really moving into my new space. Some of you know I have settled down after a couple years of nomadic living, and because of that, it's sort of unfamiliar for me to be dedicating my ovulatory energy to more home-based tasks, but it is something I often share with people. It's like, just because you don't have your own business that you're constantly creating new offerings for doesn't mean that you don't have this beautiful energetic potential each time after you bleed with that egg that's going to be ovulated when you reach ovulation, and then it gets to grow throughout your follicular phase. It's like, yeah, we can really dedicate that energy to a project, whether it's home-based, whether it's work-based, whether it's family-based, whether it's self-care based. There is so much there. And so it's been funny for me. And I was actually joking with my girlfriend, Madeline, who was on this podcast before. If you haven't listened to her episode, it's a beautiful one. And we actually are also recording a really special episode for you all about rites of passage, including my birthday rite of passage that I just had on October 19th. So that was part of the little break too, is really honoring this threshold moment I just walked through. So stay tuned for that episode, probably being released next week, with Madeline and I getting all into rites of passage. But yeah, just here to remind you really that it's enough to dedicate your ovulatory energy to something simple. For me, it's been all about moving. And I'm like, yeah, I've been like going all the way down to SoCal and back up to get my stuff and moving in. And right before recording this, I was steam cleaning my couch. And it's like, yeah, that's dedicating your ovulatory energy too. And what my friend Madeline said to me is she was also dedicating her ovulatory energy to cleaning. And she's like, yeah, like I'm going to be able to be in the harvest season of my luteal phase and rest during my bleed. And this is a gift I'm giving to those future selves. And yeah, that's really what I want to share with you women today, that the point of utilizing the full potential of your ovulatory energy, I mean, not only the point that like that's going to help you feel fulfilled, but that you get something to harvest in your luteal phase. Or in autumn, it feels good to have something to harvest. And then you get to your bleed and it feels easy to rest because you feel fulfilled, you feel complete. So that is my prayer for all of you. And as we know, rest is so vitally important. And that's such a big part of this amazing podcast episode we have today with Christine. So Christine is the founder and director of the Center for Sacred Window Studies. And in this episode, we get all into what the sacred window really is. So Christine's passion is accessing the subtle and unique keys to healing and vitality. She is a busy mother to 4 boys and practices her skills daily. She's an Ayurvedic health consultant, a birth and postpartum doula, and again, the founder of the Center for Sacred Window Studies, which is an education platform for conscious postpartum care inspired by Ayurveda and other universal traditions found around the world. She established the universal mother principles as a way of accessing the foundational qualities of giving and receiving effective care. The Center for Sacred Window Studies certifies postpartum caregivers from around the world in their online and in-person training programs. Christine runs the Sacred Window podcast, which I was on, so check that out, and blog, along with hosting monthly educational events to build awareness and educational opportunities for people who work with and support new families. Christine is featured on many podcasts, in publications and summits, including USA Today, Orgasmic Birth, and Birthing from Within. So, as you can imagine, this episode is absolutely steeped in Ayurvedic and motherhood wisdom. And yeah, it's some of my favorite topics of conversation in this episode are how, as women, we are always walking with life and death within us. That was a really profound moment for us to realize how incredibly powerful that makes us, and the vital importance of honoring postpartum as a sacred window for rest that nourishes mothers for a lifetime. So you'll have to tune in to hear the rest, but I know this is one you won't want to miss. So let's dive right in. All right. Hey, Christine, welcome to the podcast. This is so fun because I was just on your podcast and I'm so happy to have you here on mine now.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure. And yeah, I love kind of carrying on the sort of like I visited your house. Now you get to come into my house, and it's beautiful.
Oh, yeah, it's so amazing. And sometimes the feedback that I get from people when they're on my podcast, maybe you experience this too, is they're like, wow, I told you so much about myself, and now I want to know about you. And we get to do that with each other now.
Yeah, yeah. It's like you can really become connected with people through these conversations. They're so intentional.
Yeah, especially with this work around yeah, women's health, women's rites of passage, birth and postpartum, bleeding, like you really get to the intimate details of someone. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to hearing about how these experiences have shaped your life and the work that you do in the field of the postpartum care worlds now. And so, what I really love to do to start is to just ask women to share with me a little bit about themselves to orient us to where you are in your body and in your life. And so, I would love for you to share in whatever way you relate to it, where you're at in your cycle and where you're at in your larger life cycle.
Mm, thank you for asking that. That's something that I have not been asked really in that way, maybe ever. I think where I am in my cycle on different levels, I feel as though I am in a creative phase of my cycle. I'm at like a really vibrant place of my cycle. Um, sort of that period that's like after we've bled and now we have these like couple weeks of just like really active energy that feels exciting and full.
Mm.
But I also think that's really reflective of where I am in my life cycle right now. It is such a full existence with, I'm past the place of birthing. I've got four children and they're all like my youngest is 8. So we're like in it. I've got like 8 to 18 and they're so engaged in like their worlds, which because they're still children, like I'm still so in it with them. And all of, in like Ayurveda, we look at it like as pitta time of life where it's like the full sun time, fiery time of life where we're just burning hot. Like we've got a lot going on, a lot of activity, and it feels exhausting sometimes and so fun and so rewarding. And I also like I'm finding myself mindful, like maybe because my oldest is 18 and I'm very conscious that he's starting to like leave this childhood phase and enter into this place where I'm not going to be like in it with him all the time. So part of me is finding like that I have like a finger on the pulse of this next phase that will be coming in the next few years, the next decade, is like I transition into a place where it's not going to feel so fiery, hot, and active. Like I can see that and I'm aware of it. And I'm, you know, part of the time somewhat dreading it and also like craving it at the same time because it does
Mm.
feel overwhelming at times now when we're at the height of creating our businesses, creating our community, nourishing, like there's so many connections happening and demands and responsibilities, and all of that is such a privilege.
Mm.
And yeah, trying to find that balance of appreciating it and also not burning myself so hot that I crash.
Mm. Wow. Thank you for sharing that in that way. Um, it is interesting, it's interesting to think about the motherhood journey as sort of there are these different phases of motherhood. Of course, there's like the time when you're like really like birthing and breastfeeding and like you're in that kind of energy, um, which feels a bit more watery to me maybe, and then you're moving into like the full on with littles mothering, and for you, I was going to ask how old your oldest was and you said 18, and so you have like 8 to 18, this age range, which is like, different varying levels. Like the 8-year-old, of course, you're still in that mom energy with. There's a lot to handle. There's probably a lot of energy and activities and stuff going on. I feel like that's like school and sports and all of that, those ages. And then you have at the same time your 18-year-olds having you be preparing for the phase of motherhood that, like you said, is less fiery. And that is really interesting, especially on my podcast. I get really interested in this transition that women go through when you're a mother forever. Like you're a mother forever. And some people say that term like postpartum lasts forever because you're a mother forever. But like there is a certain time when you do sort of shift. In my languaging, it's from mother to like sorceress. And sorceress is kind of, she encompasses that like perimenopause and menopause transition where you're going out of that, what you said, pitta, that fiery doing fullness, and into a more like space of tending to yourself and tending to community and not just like your immediate needs of your family. And a lot of women really find their power in that phase of life. Once again, there's a saying that says, at menarche, the first bleed, a girl meets her power throughout all of her cycling years. And you could say mothering years, she practices it. And then when she reaches that threshold of menopause, or even if you don't stop bleeding right away, when you kind of leave those like full on years, you become your power. And so it's like you're really embodying that. And I feel that in sort of what you're saying, that you're like, that's coming. It's not here yet, but like that's coming. um and one question I do have for you before I ask you about your first bleed, because that's the beginning of all of this. You said you think of in Ayurveda, it's Pitta time that you're in right now. And I haven't really talked much about Ayurveda on my podcast. It's not my expertise. And I know that that's totally your zone of genius, is like the postpartum Ayurvedic space. And so I would love to hear, like, are there other times of life that correlate with the other doshas? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, it's really cool to think about it like this because we just start seeing so many layers upon layers of like just connection with the elements in nature and how that corresponds to like all of our cycles, the life cycle, you know? So when we think of like our childhood phase, this is like the kapha time of life. This is where we're like, we're juicy, we're growing, we're like solid, we're really physical. It's like this time of life that a lot of the qualities are very earth and water,
Mm.
and then the middle time of our lives is this super active, like fiery time. And then
Mm.
our later years are much more subtle. Vata time of life, space and air, where things feel drier, things are kind of, becoming more subtle. And yet there's such power in that subtle space. I love how you talked about that, that explanation, which I've heard before and really like hits home because it helps us to really see how powerful and valuable it is to like, gather to become and then to practice. And then, we culminate when a lot of society starts to look at those later years as sort of empty. They're like, we've gone inside. We have so much possibility. And it's really my intention, even within, sort of that ever-present layer of like tenderness and heartbreak when you open yourself up to parenting and loving in that way. There's always this like vulnerability we have because we love so deeply. When that changes, like it is very much an intention that is also born a little bit out of fear. Like, I don't want things to change. I don't want to like have to be sad or miss them or have it be different. And I know because my husband, he's totally like, we're feeling this together, even though like we have a lot of years to go. But it's really interesting how he and I, like, as we enter into this, we grow older, we're like syncing up with this awareness that this is coming. And yet, I haven't connected with him really in communication specifically about this, but it really does feel like my intention to be able to create such richness and joy and becoming in those years. And I can't really think of a better way to do it than to like really embody that now, embody where we are, like being really present. It's like we're always holding these other sacred windows, the ones that we've gone through and the ones that are ahead of us, but it's really about like where we are in this moment and how we unfold and how we allow ourselves to really access our pure power, our beingness, our consciousness in a way that gives back to us what we want to experience in life. And therefore, I think we are able to show up for the things in our lives that we most want to be known for. Like, I want to be a great mom. I want to be a great friend. I want to be a great teacher. I want, all the things that I do, I want to serve in the best way I can. And I think the only way I can do that is if I'm fully tapped in and present with myself. So it's like so magical the way that we carry ourselves through these cycles and how we're shaped by them and how they're kind of like ever-present portals to like discovering more.
Oh my gosh, I love that ever-present portals to discovering more. That's so good. Yeah, and the Sacred Windows, that's the name of your it's the Center for Sacred Window Studies. That's yeah.
Mhm.
And so sacred window, I'm familiar with that term. It seems similar to me. My background is more the TCM stuff, which actually is so similar to Ayurveda in so many ways. But in TCM, we call these opportunities the golden opportunities, right? And in Ayurveda, is our sacred windows, is it kind of a similar thing?
That's such a good question. And I don't honestly know.
Mm,
But what I can say about like I think they have similarities. This
yeah.
is what I know about sacred windows and what that refers to. It's sort of connected to the idea in Ayurveda of a kaya kalpa, which is a very unique window of healing opportunity. And it is appropriate for people to take a kaya kalpa period during like times that are mentioned in classic Ayurvedic teachings are menarche and postpartum and menopause. And and there are others, but ultimately, like what we do during these windows of time in support of our healing and rebalancing is it's almost like it's like supercharged. Like we have extra ability to be impacted in positive ways from that healing care or that protocol that we do. And so what is so beautiful is that, when a postpartum person, for example, is receiving the nourishment they need, the support that they need, the community support, the care routines, their body responds, their nervous systems respond, their spirit and their confidence responds like in a really powerful way, like even more so than we might receive from that type of care at a different time. So there's just a really unique combinations of things that are happening. That's like a pretty big conversation. So like I think we can all recognize that like there's a lot going on, during that time. But what it comes down to is that it is a really ripe time for reset. And so when we're able to give care during this time, we set people up for not only navigating that transition to the best of their ability, to the greatest extent possible, but it leaves an imprint so that care impacts them for many decades to come. It's like we've been imprinted with this level of care and reset, and we get to carry that with us as we move forward in life. So that's what feels so exciting to me in really honoring these sacred windows, is that it's not just impacting who we are today, it's helping to shape us for who we want to become tomorrow.
My intention with the Moon Baby Magic podcast has always been that it feels like a safe sanctuary for women's stories. The kind of stories that we used to sit around the fire and share with each other, the kind of stories that came from honoring rites of passage and having the circle of sisters feel strong. If you've ever craved that level of community but haven't quite found it in person, I want you to know that the next Nourished and Thriving retreat is coming up, and this is exactly the place for women like you. On the twin volcano island of Ometepe, rising from the sacred waters of Lake Coquibolca of Nicaragua, we gather for 8 days of women-centered activities, like adventuring to tropical waterfalls, self-love, powerful photo sessions, silent mornings with bone broth cacao, daily women's well-being, health, womb, and expansion workshops, and mouth-watering, deeply nourishing, seed oil-free international dishes made with grass-fed local meat, fruits, vegetables, and raw dairy. 7 nights of singing, story sharing, and heart-to-heart conversations around a crackling fire on the beach, while connecting with like-hearted women as the stars twinkle above and we sip even more bone broth hot chocolate. Laura and I hosted the first Nourished and Thriving retreat this past spring, in the Sacred Valley of Peru, and it was amazing. The women healed. They learned new things about themselves. They learned about their bodies. They came home to their cycles. They made friends with each other and have continued to connect and reap the benefits of giving this gift to themselves. The Nourished and Thriving retreat is happening next time, March 30th to April 6th, 2026, this time in beautiful Nicaragua, and we want you to join us. The pre-sale pricing is live until November 15th, so you can get the lowest price ever then. And yes, of course, there are payment plans available and a connection call to chat with us for free to make sure that this is the right fit for you. There are women already claiming their spots, and we hope that you're next. So you can find all the details in the show notes. I do a lot of work with women re-imprinting their first bleed, because when we're not like tended to, which most of us unfortunately aren't, in our first bleed, that'll come up for women in their postpartum time, or like, there's this building. And so I'm curious, I love to ask women about their first bleeds, because that is our initiation into our rites of passage as a woman. And so I'm curious, like, do you remember yours? What do you remember about it? What was that like for you?
I remember everything. And it's interesting because I've done some work on this, And so when I look back on it now, it's with such love and almost awe. Whereas for many, many years, it was like it did not have those qualities. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah.
But it was a really unique situation because it was the summer after sixth grade, and I was participating earlier that year. We had hosted a French exchange student in our home, and she was my age, and she had come with a group of students who were all about our age. And so different families in our community hosted them. And in the summer, our group was going there, and I was going to stay with her family. And
Aw.
she lived with her mom, who did not speak English, and her younger sister and brother. And so they didn't speak English. She was the only one in the family who spoke some English. But I'm, you know, in between sixth and seventh grade. I'm in a small town in France, and I get my period for the first time.
Wow.
And I'm so not prepared.
Oh.
I'm afraid. Like I remember being in their bathroom and everything felt very different anyway, because like it was in an apartment building. I lived in a house at home, like everything. It was my first time being overseas. I really was like already experiencing so much that was a little intimidating and doing well. But when this happened, it was really, I didn't know how to handle it. And I was very embarrassed
Mm.
and nervous. And my first instinct was to just hide it and like pretend like this wasn't happening. And so I did. I didn't say anything. And it was a couple of days later when her very, very amazingly sweet, wonderful mom like gently pulled me aside because she found all of my laundry and she saw and she just knew. And she like took me and like put her arm around me and she bought me some pads at the store, and she didn't speak English, but she totally took care of me. And she like kept it secret. Like she didn't tell Cindy or anything. It was very, very kind.
Mm.
And I was so grateful because I certainly hadn't said anything. And I was, but anyway, that's what happened. That's what happened. And I remember like coming home, and my mom kind of like, she must have written to my mom and told her what happened, because my mom, said something later, but it was all kind of very glossed over. There was no other than, her kindness, which I think meant more than there was really words to say. Like the energy there was actually really wonderful. But from
Mm.
my inner landscape, I wanted to hide from it and I was embarrassed. And in those, that year and really ongoing, like culture never told me that there was anything positive about this experience. Um, there were like jokes about how disgusting it was, like from like in the culture, like in my school, like it was just something people laughed at or hid or were embarrassed by. And I think we all kind of have to like grapple with that and work that out in different ways. And it certainly is something that I feel like I've transformed just kind of naturally into something that is such a privilege, such a beautiful thing that has enabled me to fully express my femininity and like have my children and all of it. I'm so grateful. But yeah, what a way to start.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for sharing that story. I mean, there's so many little themes in there. I love the kindness that your host mother showed you, like without words. That feels really impactful to me. And I love that, like, when you've gone back and reflected on that, you've been able to see that as like a positive part of the story. Because I think it's really important for our psyche to hold on to like what went well. Um, Even if at the same time there's like most of us have these like cultural programming scripts of like it being gross or dirty or like something to hide, like you're saying, that imprint of like fear and hiding. And even just the imprint of like not having it, even though you wanted to hide it, like not having it really celebrated by your mother or something like that. I think most of us grieve that, even if we can't really put words to the fact that that's what we're grieving.
Yeah.
Because rites of passage want to be marked, like they want to be marked. Yeah. And I'm curious, when we talk about this sort of building upon each other, these sacred windows, there was that imprint of fear initially for you and like some shame with your first bleed. Do you feel like, how did that play out, throughout your cycling years and even bringing me up to like your first pregnancy and birth experience? Did that come up for you again?
I think the what's coming into my mind is when, I feel like it wasn't something that I experienced again until I had several miscarriages before I had my first baby. And
Mm,
that felt like
wow.
the first time since that initial like fear of what's going on with my body, like, oh my gosh, I'm surprised I wasn't expecting this. And then it was this like, you know, just this, I mean, there were different, the different times like had some different qualities to them of where I was and my, was I wanting this pregnancy? Was this a
Mm,
surprise or was this planned? There were like a lot of layers of how each of those were experienced, but there was this like fear associated with like, can I trust my body? Can I do this? Can I, is this safe? Am I safe? All of those things. And it's really incredible how so much of our emotional landscape and our like the most pivotal parts of our life experiences are connected to our menstrual cycle and our
mm,
fertility. And like it is just this red thread woven through everything. And I remember the first time I really realized that, like it was such a powerful moment of like, oh my gosh, like this involves itself in literally every aspect of my life. Whether it's, is this going to impact like my daily life when I'm on this vacation that I'm planning? Is this going to impact like, you know, we're always kind of in this state as an adult anyway of like, am I trying to get pregnant? Am I not trying to get pregnant? Am I like, can I? Like,
mm.
it's all sort of an undercurrent of everything that we do in some ways. And I find that to be pretty mind-blowing.
Wow, I've never thought about it that way, but it's so true. It's like we are always in relationship with our cycles and our wombs and our reproductive capacity and like just our womanhood. Like we're very, as women, we're very deeply embodied no matter what. I mean, even if you're someone who's like taking hormonal birth control or something, you still have to think, I have to take this every day, right? Like there's still a level of like attunement to our body's rhythms that we can just like never fully escape, which I mean, I don't ever think it's something to be escaped, but it's
Mhm.
like we're just always in relationship with that. You're so right.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. And I'm grateful you brought up this topic around like, can I trust my body around miscarriages? Because I think a lot of women, obviously, so many women experience this. And that's another rite of passage in our culture that I think is just swept under the rug. And we don't talk about that, even though a vast amount of our female population has this experience of loss. And so I'm curious how you moved through those fears around like, can I trust my body? Like, how did you handle that?
Hmm. Well, I think I just took one breath at a time, and it was so much like praying and like talking to my body and like connecting with myself and trying to foster trust, like really, like I really believe that we create a lot, like we are constantly creating. And so I was very mindful about creating trust and
Yeah.
fostering that, even when it felt hard and inauthentic sometimes.
Mm,
I was faking it because
mm,
I was still scared.
yeah.
But when I was pregnant with my oldest, I remember, that whole first trimester, like, and when I would get to the part of that trimester where I had experienced previous losses and just kind of moving through that week with like a lump in my throat and like my heart, just kind of tender. And then, we moved through it. And then it was another week and another week and another week. And then it was, I remember the first time I heard his heartbeat and I just like cracked open, because it was like real. And so, I think that is the power that we have as birthing people. We have this really incredible ability to tap into living with incredible fear and vulnerability and this creative life or death that is always there. We walk through life anyway, and we still do all these incredible things, and we laugh and we live fully. And yet we're always like faced with this incredible power of life or death that we carry. And I'm pretty in awe of that. I think that really makes us just so powerful. And I wish that we kind of
Oh,
collectively could recognize our power in that because
oh my God, yeah.
literally that's what we do every day.
I mean, as you're saying that, it's just like this whole thing is clicking for me that, like, as women, like, we literally do carry life and death. Like, we can experience both of those things in our own bodies. And, like, how big do we have to expand to, like, hold that? And it's like, we don't even have to think about it. It's just like what we do. And you're so right. We just like walk around the world with this like insane power in our wombs. And I think about it all the time, but something about the way you just said that, I'm just like really in awe. Wow.
Yeah, and I think just the way that people can heal blows my mind.
Yeah.
We I mean, I've read, before, like I think, there is this like almost fear of women because like we bleed every month, but we don't die, there's this like incredible power that's there. And perhaps that's why, there's such suppression because, you know, there's fear of that power. We have so much. But there's also this like ability to go through incredibly difficult things. Birth is hard and it's incredible and we go through that, but there's so much more, I think, on all the other layers of life that like we can go through the fires, and then we can come back and we can create resiliency. I've watched friends like navigate some of the most unbelievable things. Like we come through it. And so I think that to me is really, the cycling and the birth and the loss and all of these windows that, we sort of open ourselves to throughout life. It's representative of so much more of
Mhm.
this inner strength and regenerative power and just creative energy. Like we can create what it is that we want to create.
Yep.
We have that ability. Everybody has that ability, but particularly I think when we're looking at, you know, women and mothers and, populations that are sort of like they try to push that down because it's so great. And
So
so what happens when like we decide that we want to fully live our possibilities, that feels really exciting to me. And I think that's the moment where society begins to change.
Mm. Yeah, and I mean that's like the importance of this work, like this work that you do around supporting mothers in one of their sacred windows so that they can have the capacity to create and weave this web of like really heart-centered creation. That's what I feel from like when women fully step into that power of creation they have. It's like from the heart, you know, it's not this like power over like I'm gonna dominate. It's like, how can I make this world a better place through what I'm creating? Um, yeah, and I'm curious, like this work that you're doing around postpartum, I'm sure that that dropped in from your own experiences. Can you tell me a little more about that?
Yeah, yeah. I felt once I, had moved through the bulk of my pregnancy and I nearing uh, birth, I really was feeling quite empowered and good and strong. And I had worked really hard to trust myself, and I was trusting myself. I trusted my body and birth. Um, but what I did not understand was how that postpartum window would go. And I didn't understand. And I think it's okay to not understand what to expect because it's always going to be earth shattering in some way, shape, or form. But I didn't understand really what my body, what all of me was going to need. And I wasn't prepared. So what ended up happening was that I felt quite blindsided,
Mm,
in fact, and it was just really, really hard. And so I do believe that like we get shown where we're supposed to go and what we're supposed to do in different ways throughout life. And I was led to start studying Ayurveda when my baby was like a year and a half. I was really called to this program. And what
mm,
I discovered there was that there was this incredible tradition around healing after birth. And
mm,
so I was connected with my teacher, Yesha Oaks, during that time. And I was also pregnant with my second child. And so all of it aligned to really show me what I could do in this world, like what I could offer beyond, myself, my children, my husband, like my community. I wanted to serve and try to give back in a greater way. And um,
mm,
my teacher passed away pretty suddenly in 2015. And it was at that time that myself and my colleagues were like, wow, I think that we should carry this torch a little bit. We
mm,
need to help make sure that this wisdom is being passed on because it changes lives. It changes the trajectory of people's lives moving forward. And it's
yeah.
something that we get to reclaim. That feels really exciting to me.
Yeah. Was there, yeah, I mean, I love that this just dropped in for you, like after your first birth experience. I think that's so powerful and just really speaks to like our intuitive knowings of these ways as women, even if we don't have like the blueprint yet, you knew like there's something and then you found it. And I'm curious, like, how was your experience? You don't have to go into super depth about all of your postpartums, but like, what was the difference in the ways that you tended to yourself and your postpartums after you had this wisdom?
Mm, it was night and day. It was night
Mm.
and day. Yeah. It was, I don't know that I even have words. Like what I experienced was just such a gift of autonomy, of confidence, of really leaning into trust. Like, remember we talked about like that fear? I totally dropped into fear after my first son was born. And I was in love with him, and I was really disconnected from
Mm.
my inner knowing because I didn't know what was going on with my body and I didn't know how to make it better.
Mm.
And Ayurveda as this this lens of like life knowledge, understanding ourselves through nature. This is for everybody. It's not just for people who are interested in Ayurveda. Like we're all living this, like whether or not you've ever heard that word, like you are living it because you are living life in a
Mm,
human body. And this is a framework for how to understand that. And
mm,
so for me, it translated as I understand what qualities to bring into every single thing, whether it's my food or my daily routine or like a remedy to fix X, Y, or Z. Like I understood how to move things back into balance when they started to feel out of balance. But I think the
mm,
greatest shift was a peace of mind and like an easy heart. Even though going from one child to two children is really intense, I think that was like very interestingly, like 0 to 1 is like earth shattering. Zero
mm.
to two is like really hard because you're trying to like balance. I'm speaking, I guess, for myself for sure.
Yeah.
To two felt like now I have to do two, and this is like a whole new skill set. But 3 and 4 was just like easeful because
Mm,
I'd already done I understood like what
mm,
that balance felt like, and it had a very different quality to it with those two, even though you would think like, oh, it's more work, it's more responsibilities, but it wasn't. It was like a settling more fully into myself and who I was as a
mm,
mother.
mm,
And what's so amazing is that it's like knowing those sacred window tools and protocol and preparation, all the things like I talked earlier about like that imprinting, but I think another way that it's imprinted itself is I always have this like guidepost to go back to at any time I feel depleted, anytime I'm going
mm,
through a transition, anytime that I need to be cared for. Like I've already created those neural pathways. I've already created those embodied experiences. And so it's become this like manual for like how to do life.
mm.
Oh,
Yes,
it's cool.
that's amazing. And who do you feel like, speaking of how these sacred windows have the opportunity to really affect us long term, like change us viscerally long term, who do you feel like you've become today because of the experiences you had in your postpartum sacred windows?
Mm, mm. I do feel like I'm in motion, like I haven't, arrived at any becoming, but I do feel peaceful and trust in myself. I feel like I have become someone who knows what to do when things start to feel off. I
Mm,
know how to come back to that place. And I feel like I know how to be present for my children. And I'm good with that. I don't think I need anything more than that right now.
mm. Yeah, it's so beautiful. I love the speaking to the sense of peace. I talk about that a lot in my own work around like healing hormonal imbalance and whatnot. And the cyclical living aspect is like, I think I say like the biggest healing flex, in my opinion, is that deep sense of inner peace. It's not the like perfect cycle or the pain-free period. Like that's what that's what people think they want, but beneath that, what people want is that deep sense of peace. And so I just love the way that you so beautifully spoke to that in your own experience.
And that doesn't mean that, like, yeah, that everything is like honestly,
Yeah.
it's a shit show. So much of the time, I hope it's okay to say that on your show, but like life is like nutty. Like even this weekend, My husband is away for the weekend. I'm like looking at the calendar, like, how is any of this going to happen? Because there's so much, like, I'm one person, but that's okay. That's okay. Like, it can be chaos and there can still be like a foundational sense of peace.
Mm,
So
yeah.
that is what I'm going for.
No, I mean, it's amazing because it's like, of course, there's always the world is going to throw so much at us, but to be able to know that you have tended to yourself in such a way that you're resourced enough to handle it is what I'm really hearing. And like you like trust yourself to handle it.
And that is what I want for people who are being cared for in postpartum. Like, it's going to be a mess in different ways. It's going to be, but I think that's okay. Like, maybe messes can also be beautiful because
Mm,
they enable us to access that resiliency. If everything were like a spring day all the time, when would we ever have to access that?
yeah.
It
Oh my
just
God. Yeah.
handed to us.
Yeah. No, it's so true. Yeah, and I speak to the same thing with the like phase of the cycle. If we were always in our perfect ovulatory energy, like how would we ever, yeah, learn more about ourselves? And yeah, I love that vision that you have of like every woman receiving that from her postpartum. And I've just really appreciated this conversation. You have such gorgeous wisdom to share and through your own experiences and through your work. And yeah, I'd love for you to share a little bit of what you're doing, your offerings, and where anyone listening can find out more.
Thank you so much. This has been really, really lovely. And I feel like it's gone by so fast. So that is
No.
a sign of a lovely conversation. Yeah, thank you. We love to help and support, emerging caregivers. So our programs, there's students all over the world who study online with us, and we do have an in-person training week in the summers. We work with people who are brand new to this work, and we also support people who are practicing as postpartum care providers and who are feeling like they're ready for their businesses to grow to a new level. So sacredwindowstudies.com. We offer, free sort of alignment sessions on Zoom if someone is interested in that. All the social media, Instagram, Sacred Window Studies. But it's such a pleasure. It's really that, honestly, Natalie, is one of the reasons why I feel like I have the ability to tap into that piece, is because the people who we are able to connect with on a regular basis through this type of work are people who help that grow within us. It is a phenomenal community to be around when people recognize how important this is and they show up with such grace, and uh, it's really inspiring.
Mm.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that and such important work you're doing and offering for women to find their calling and be able to support more women in tending to themselves. So yeah, I want to thank you for the work that you do and also just thank you deeply for this conversation. It has gone by so fast and been so sweet and beautiful.
Thank you, Natalie. I appreciate you.
Yeah.
Thank you for tuning into the wisdom of the womb today. It's truly such an honor to bring these stories forward to you, and it would mean so much to me if you'd rate and review this podcast so that it could reach more women. If you're looking for deeper support, you can find the link to join our online community, the Cyclical Living Circle, in the show notes below. There, you'll also find the links to book one-on-one virtual sessions, shop the herbal shop, and any group programs that I'm currently offering. Plus, you can follow me on Instagram, and I love to connect with you all there. All right, see you next week.